This is History for Cocktail Parties with hack historians Thornton Kennedy and James Ottley.
Welcome to History for Cocktail Parties. My name is Thornton Kennedy.
And I'm James Ottley.
And James, we've had a good couple weeks here, man.
Yes, indeed.
You were on 99X 2 weeks ago.
Love talking history on the Morning X with Barnes and Crash Clark.
What'd you talk to him about?
What do you think? The JFK conspiracy and the Atlanta connections.
Of course. You
Absolutely.
know, a reader left a comment on one of our episodes that they want another JFK episode.
I'm hoping I can talk you into it.
That is how it's likely. Well, look, we'll go for it. And then this week, the Northside Neighbor ran a feature story on our podcast.
That's right.
Which we love.
Indeed. What an honor.
So thank you to Logan Gordon for writing that flattering article on our little startup here.
We really appreciate it.
So y'all go to Northside Neighbor and check it out. So we're getting back to North Carolina, back to the Wright brothers. This is our second episode about how North Carolina became first in flight, according to their license plates.
That's right.
Anyways. First episode, we talked about that first controlled prolonged flight in an airplane on the Outer Banks, December 17th, 1903. And James, you gave an excellent explanation of fluid dynamics and how flight works.
Not bad for an English major.
It was outstanding. And then a few specifics that allowed Orville and Wilbur to control their homemade machine. We're going to get more into that today with the discussion of one of the most important components, which was the rudder.
That's right.
And we talked about serial killer Oliver Cook Howe and how this bizarre accident ends up becoming one of those butterfly flapping its wings, ding, ding, ding,
ding,
in history. And it's one of those crazy stories. But we got a couple more today.
Indeed.
Signature cocktail right here, the Aviation. Give it a little jingle. This is gin, lemon juice, little creme de violette, which gives us this.
I love the color
tint.
Yeah, it does look like you'd think jet fuel,
maybe,
but it doesn't taste like it.
It doesn't at all. It tastes quite delicious. So cheers to you.
Indeed.
Cheers to our second episode on the Wright brothers. And
right on.
Obviously, aviation became such a big deal in the early 1900s. It was everywhere. So drinks, bars, they all kind of. There's a story about one of the first women to fly in the plane had a dress and the ropes tied her, like the dress to her ankle so it didn't fly up in the air.
Oh, really?
And that became like a fashion accessory to have the ropes tying your dress down.
I won't go further into that.
Get back into women's underwear. This gives us an opportunity to say a quick word about Play, one of our partners. History is full of lessons learned. And one of the big ones is that those who don't take action get run over by those who do. Play is a full-service ad agency that helps brands find their spark or reignite it. Their team of creative, quote, players, end quote, turns bold ideas into action with smart strategy, design, and digital know-how, helping new businesses launch strong and established ones move forward with fresh energy. Ready to grow your business? Get a free marketing consultation today at goplaydesign.com. That's goplaydesign.com.
We truly appreciate your support.
Great partnership. So the whole impetus of this episode, this arc, was Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. That's the southern component of this story. But we didn't get to Kitty Hawk in the last episode. I mean, we discussed that first flight, right?
Right.
But we didn't really get into why two brothers with a bicycle shop in Dayton, Ohio, who had never ventured farther than Chicago, would travel 700 miles to test these gliders in a place neither of them had ever heard of or much less been to.
A lot of people hadn't heard of it.
Yeah. Wilbur's first trip out there is one of the crazier stories.
That's like an epic journey.
It really is. So it's 1900. He traveled by train to Norfolk, Virginia from Dayton, Ohio, September 7th, 1900. Took 24 hours.
Is that right?
To get from Dayton, Ohio to Norfolk. From Norfolk, he takes a train down to Elizabeth City, North Carolina.
Yeah.
Gets off the train, and he asks, hey, how do I get to Kitty Hawk?
Right.
No one's heard of Kitty Hawk. He goes down to the waterfront. Has anyone heard of Kitty Hawk?
Right.
It takes him 4 days to find anyone who has ever heard of Kitty Hawk.
Wow.
Finally, he finds a skipper who was from there. He could take him on his schooner, which they could reach by a small skiff. And you're a boat guy.
Yeah.
Skiff is a little flat bottom
Absolutely.
thing.
Yeah.
Schooner is that classic,
Right.
double masted.
Right.
Am I right?
I don't know if it's double masted or maybe triple masted, but absolutely, you got that right.
So they get on this little skiff to go out to the schooner.
And I love.
Wilbur looks at the boat and he asks the captain, "Is it safe?" And the captain says, "Oh, it's safer than the big boat."
Instills confidence, right?
So Wilbur is just bailing water this whole time. This is not a guy that's been on a lot of boats.
Right.
He's not a sailor. So he reaches the big boat, and then Wilbur writes this letter to his sister that describes the big boat, and it's amazing. He writes, "The sails were rotten, the ropes badly worn, and the rudder post half rotted off, and the cabin so dirty and vermin infested that I kept out of it from first to last."
Yeah.
The voyage to Kitty Hawk was 40 miles. I don't want to say at this point, there were no bridges that connected the Outer Banks to the mainland.
Yeah, I mean,
so the only way to get there was by boat. So they didn't set off till after dark. They're heading into a stiff wind. Waves are pounding the boat. Boat starts to leak, so Wilbur is back to bailing water. The wind rises to a gale, which is driving the boat towards the shore. One gust blew the foresail loose from the boom. Another tears the mainsail loose. The boat is completely failing in this storm. I mean, it's just absolute chaos. They have to bring the sails down. You're a sailor. Is that just bringing it in, or?
Well, they probably, what do they call it, heave to, or that's one way to survive a gale.
Yeah, and so they just
bring the sails down and
heave to,
or hove to,
right, and just hunker down and wait for the storm to pass. Spent half a day the next day making repairs. They don't get to Kitty Hawk until 9 p.m. at night. They had been on the water for 2 days.
Crazy.
So that's their initial trip out there. But the isolation wasn't really why they chose Kitty Hawk. It's a much more Wilbur Wright sort of story. We talked about the injury and how that really let him dive into flight and how flight worked. And he wrote a letter to the Smithsonian asking for all the information the Smithsonian had on aerial flight, human flight. The Smithsonian sends him a list of books plus every pamphlet they had on the subject. So this gets him started.
Which included Leonardo da Vinci, right?
Leonardo da Vinci, all of that stuff. So he is just devouring all of this information. So that's what leads to Wilbur and Orville starting to build these flyers above their little bicycle shop. But they needed a place to test them. Wilbur writes a letter to Octave Chanute, who we introduced in the first episode. He's an engineer, aviation pioneer, world-renowned aviation expert. And what he's looking for is the best place to conduct these flying experiments where there's little rain or inclement weather, where there's constant wind around 15 miles per hour. Chanute writes back that he knows of only 2 places, California or Florida. But neither had sand hills, which he considered critical for soft landings. He wrote that the coasts of Georgia or South Carolina might work. So Wilbur writes to the United States Weather Bureau in Washington seeking information about prevailing winds around the country. And the Bureau sends back the records of monthly wind velocities. And that, James, is how they get to Kitty Hawk.
Is that right?
He looks at these wind velocities. He writes a letter to the head of the Weather Bureau station there, and he receives assurances that it met the criteria. Then another letter arrives unprompted. It was from the former Kitty Hawk postmaster, William J. Tate. He wrote that not only were there stretches of sandy land 1 mile by 5 with just a bare hill in the center 80 feet high, but there was, quote, not a tree or bush anywhere to break the evenness of the wind current, end quote.
Cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
A 1 mile by 5 miles of just open landscape.
Yeah.
Absolutely perfect. When Wilbur gets there after that dreadful night, he goes straight to Tate's house. Tate takes him in. Tate ends up finding the place for them to do their experiments. Tate's wife lends Wilbur her sewing machine so he can work on the, what was the material called again?
Muslin.
Yeah. To repair tears to the fabric that was the wings. And all the citizens of Kitty Hawk, and these are fishermen. These are, they work at the life-saving station.
I can't imagine there's that many of them.
There are probably 50 houses out there. They pitch in and help the Wright brothers. And that's the story of how Southern hospitality really shaped the Wright brothers and helped them get these gliders up off of the ground. And like I said, they flew them kind of like kites at first,
right?
But they weren't as successful as they thought they would be. They had some real struggles with how to control them, and that was really the key to the whole thing.
You're exactly right. I mean, the first gliders had really two major disappointments that sent them back to the drawing board, basically. The first was that it only produced 1/3 of the lift that they had calculated and expected, and that's because the math was wrong.
Right.
And also, even worse, sometimes the glider pointed in the opposite direction or intended direction of a turn. And this is the story of the discovery or the invention of the movable rudder in airplanes. So,
because he didn't think you needed that at first.
That's right. The first gliders didn't have them. I mean, it had a fixed, like this thing, this fixed rudder. It was not a movable rudder that stuck. Didn't even look like a tail. It was just a stuck rudder on the back of those two wings. So if you take a ruler, and you might recognize this ruler.
There it is.
Yeah, the Kiwanis Club ruler.
Golden ruler.
Golden rule. Take a ruler, hold it in the middle of like a pair of wings, and your hand is let's say the body of the airplane. Inches 1 through 6 are the left side of the wing, and inches, say, 7 through 12 are the right side of the wing. And if you rotate or tilt this ruler so that the left side or the left wing is higher than the right side, our right wing, using wing warping.
Wing warping, I was going to say that's exactly what that is.
Of course. You'd think, and the Wrights thought, that you would start a nice banking turn to the right.
Exactly like a bicycle.
That's
right?
exactly like a bicycle, and basically in the direction of the lower wing.
Right.
So that's what you'd expect. And again, wing warping was, how they accomplished this, and one of the true breakthroughs of the Wright brothers, in terms of control flight. So, in our example here, the left side of the ruler is higher than the right side.
Right.
Holding it in the middle.
Ladies and gentlemen, I can actually see this.
That's
He's
right.
Demonstrating this for an audience of one.
And we haven't gotten to video yet. And so I have created more lift on the left wing, the one that's higher, and less lift on the right wing, the one which is, it makes sense, right?
Sure.
Left side's higher, more lift. Right side's lower, less lift. But the higher wing actually not only it has more lift, but it also creates more drag. And I'm not going to try and explain why more lift means more drag, because that would involve math.
Right.
And I was told there would be no math. But people smarter than you and me combined have determined that the more lift results in more drag. And they're interconnected, but not directly connected. I'm going to leave it at that. But anyway, trust me on this. More lift means more drag.
I will trust you.
Okay.
I'll take your word for it.
So the higher wing, then because of this higher drag, tries to pull the airplane's nose to the left.
Oh, wow.
Even though our plane is rolling to the right.
Oh, that's so bizarre.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, that's exactly the opposite of what you would think would happen.
Exactly. And what the Wrights thought would happen. And this is called adverse yaw. It's a nautical term. And just for, to make sure we're on the same page, just to be clear, I'm saying adverse yaw, a nautical term, not adverse yaw.
Adverse yaw.
Yeah, exactly. So a ship will yaw off course if the rudder comes out of the water or the rudder is disabled. That's where they get that term. And so in 1901, the glider had a rudder on the back, but it was fixed. It did not move.
Right.
Okay. And so Orville realized he needed a movable rudder, okay, like a boat. And the Wrights discovered that if you built a movable rudder, turned it away from the higher wing in a banking turn, then you could eliminate that adverse yaw, which was pulling it in the wrong direction. And so in short, they discovered, again, just brilliant on the part of the Wright brothers, discovered the true purpose of an airplane rudder. And they put one on their next model, and not to change the direction of the flight like a rudder on a boat, but to align the aircraft properly during banking turns. I mean, the stuff these guys came up with.
Again, they didn't graduate from high school.
Yeah.
I mean, these
Right.
guys were just figuring this out by trial and error
Right.
and watching and realizing what was happening in real time and made
Absolutely.
huge advancements.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But God, what a disappointment to think, because it's so logical to watch this wing. Again, I'm picking up the ruler, my
I know.
Kiwanis Golden Rule ruler that both Thornton and I have been awarded by being president of the Atlanta Kiwanis Club, downtown Atlanta. You'd think it would turn this way.
Completely.
And
the fact that it would actually go
right.
the opposite way
makes no sense.
I'm sure that confounded Wilbur.
Absolutely. I'm sure one of those gliders came crashing down to the ground.
Yeah.
I sure do hope that they had insurance for that airplane.
And if they needed insurance, they would call Sterling Seacrest Pritchard, one of the Southeast's largest privately held insurance brokers, and quite possibly the only agency brave enough to tackle everything from construction mishaps to healthcare misadventures, logistics disasters, real estate whoopsies, and even ransom notes from hackers who apparently have never heard of two-factor authentication. When it comes to your home, your business, and all the weirdness life can throw your way, SSP has you covered, usually before you realize you need it. For a friendly guide through, wait, that can actually happen, to, do I need a lawyer? Call 678-424-6503 or visit sspins.com. That's sspins.com. And we thank you for your partnership, Sterling Seacrest Pritchard.
We truly appreciate it.
Do you know who broke the story of the Wright brothers' flight?
I don't.
It was not the local newspaper there in Dayton, Ohio, the Dayton Daily News.
Yeah, that was just what you'd expect.
Which is what you would expect. And let me tell you quickly about the Dayton Daily News, because you may not have heard of it, but you have certainly heard of its founder, James Cox.
Of course.
Cox Communications.
Cox Enterprises.
Probably one of the largest communication platforms in the country.
Absolutely.
Was started right there in Dayton, Ohio. It was in the Wright brothers' backyard. And as the Wright brothers made these initial flights, right, they were sending notes to the local newspapers back in Dayton of what they were accomplishing. And the newspapers did not pick up on it at all. Even the editor of the newspaper, when they get that first report in 1903, his name was Frank Tunnison, not to pick on Frank, but he reportedly remarked to the Wright brothers' other brother, whose name was Lauren, 50 seconds, hey? If it had been 57 minutes, then it might be a news item.
Pretty high standards.
I know, pretty high standards.
Yeah.
Journalism did not have the same standards in 1900. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
They ran a lot of stuff. So incredibly, the guy that breaks the story of the Wright brothers is Amos Ives Root of Medina, Ohio. And he has a publication called Gleanings in Bee Culture. And that is where news of these flights first break. Now, at this point, they had moved from Kitty Hawk back to Dayton, Ohio.
Yeah.
And they were flying in this field, which is called Huffman Prairie.
Yeah.
And if you took the tram into town, you would see them flying over these open fields. They were out there. And again, the local newspapers ignored everything that was going on out there.
Even when they were right in their backyard.
Except for this one.
The beekeeper.
Very interesting little man.
Yeah.
He was the founder of A.I. Root & Company, one of the nation's largest manufacturers of beekeeping equipment.
Of course.
He was an inventor, businessman, just became interested in the reports of these Wright brothers experiments. And he drove down there.
Yeah.
200 miles.
Yeah.
And what he sees, James, which is just mind-boggling, he goes down there, he's the only one, and he sees this plane do a full circle around a field up in the sky. And he sits down and writes this detailed account, sends it to the Wright brothers to make sure that it's accurate.
Yeah.
They edit it, send it back to him. He offered it to Scientific American.
I read that.
Because it was such an important thing. Scientific American doesn't believe him.
Yeah.
They don't believe, no one believes the Wright brothers' claims. And so he ends up running it in Gleanings in Bee Culture.
That's the name of his
little publication that was the first to publish a detailed, accurate account of Wilbur and Orville Wright mastering human flight.
And you heard that here first.
And he recognizes the significance of what he had seen. And he, quote, "These brothers have probably not even a faint glimpse of what the discovery is going to bring to the children of men. No one living can give a guess of what is coming along this line much better than anyone living could conjecture the final outcome of Columbus's experiment." I mean, Root really saw what was happening at Huffman Prairie.
Right.
And wrote it before even the local newspapers had any clue what was going on.
It's wild, isn't it?
It's interesting because the Wright brothers were not necessarily publicity shy. They had sent their brother Loren with that telegram to get publicity in the Dayton newspapers. But it ends up becoming really important because they become so protective of their intellectual property. They know that they have come up with something that is very valuable. They are businessmen. And
as you mentioned on our last episode, they didn't have government funding. And so they weren't just doing this for the love of the game. I mean, they wanted to make money off of their invention. And actually the story of the patent that they got and some of the patent wars
and you
or
talk
lawsuits,
about that. It was not a patent for an airplane. It was a patent for the technology that allowed you to control the airplane.
The 3-axis control. An airplane, which nobody, as we talked about last time, other people could get up in the air.
Yeah. But they couldn't control it.
Yeah, and it didn't work out.
And that's the key, is they were sustained.
Right,
they could get up there and stay in the air and do circles, figure eights.
And we're talking about 3-axis control. One of the components of that, we talked about this a little bit earlier in this episode, is wing warping.
Right.
And so, of course, the wing warping concept is a major component of the Wright brothers' patent. And it's interesting. The patent was really broad, and it got approved. The patent, it literally states, this patent explicitly includes other methods instead of wing warping that could be used for adjusting outer portion of the machine's wings to achieve lateral roll control.
Wow.
So they weren't, this was really
they just
broad.
Claimed authority over anything that could control the wing.
It'd be like the inventor of the hot dog saying, hey, this patent doesn't include regular run-of-the-mill hot dog, but it includes any, tube of meat with nitrates between a bun. It's just absolutely ridiculous. It's pretty wild that it was approved. So wing warping, of course, seemed to work great for them on cloth wings, with not bamboo, but whatever it was.
You could change the angles twist it of the wing
like a kite. Those first gliders were more like kites. So this early aviator was kind of competing with them, Glenn Curtiss.
Yeah, Curtiss.
And other aviators devised these things called ailerons. And we've all seen ailerons. We've all sat in an airplane. He devised these things to emulate the wing warping techniques that the Wright brothers came up with, for this lateral control. And these are the flaps that we see going up and down on the back of an airplane wing. The gist is, rather than twisting or warping, which works great on cloth and a wooden wing, it doesn't work
on metal.
Yeah. And so the Wrights said, hey, look at our patent, Curtiss. What you're doing is an infringement. It infringes on our patent rights, and we're warning you, don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't fly or sell airplanes with ailerons. Well, he did it anyway.
And Curtiss was successful. He got up in the air. He could fly.
Absolutely. And so the Wrights filed a lawsuit against him. And also they sued foreign aviators who flew at U.S. exhibitions who used these ailerons. And it's funny, the Curtiss people said that the Wrights were sue happy. They said, quote, if someone jumped up in the air and waved his arms, the Wrights would sue. So while these, lawsuits were pending, the Wrights made an agreement with the Aero Club of America to license air shows so that folks that were flying with these ailerons could fly without fear of being sued. But they would pay franchise fees or license fees to the Wrights, while this suit was going on. And ultimately, January of 1914, U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals upheld a verdict in favor of the Wrights.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, exactly. Which is a little bit surprising to me because it was very broad. Wilbur felt
highly likely the judges did not understand
what
was in those
They
patents.
Needed us to explain it to them, right?
Two English majors.
Right. So Wilbur felt vindicated, and he did not press on for future litigation. His folks in his company were kind of upset by this because they wanted that monopoly. Can I take us down a quick rabbit hole?
Of course. James, you are the king of the rabbit hole.
So in 1910, a guy named Asa Candler Jr., who was the son of the founder of the Coca-Cola Company, invited pilots to do exhibition flights from midfield of his Atlanta Speedway, which is a dirt track in Hapeville, Georgia. Had asked him to do these exhibitions in the middle of the field during the races. This track was actually owned by the Atlanta Auto Association.
Right.
Asa Candler Sr. was main benefactor of that club.
He owned everything. And
so Asa Jr., also known as Buddy Candler, got to run the thing. And so this was 1910, and that case hadn't been settled yet. I'm assuming or presuming that these exhibitions were part of this license agreement.
Agreed.
He had these exhibition flights going on and auto races going on at the same time, but they were not enough to keep the track profitable. And ultimately, the track closed after the 1911 races.
Oh, the track closed for a number of reasons.
But one of the reasons was it wasn't
not profitable.
Right, exactly. So a little side note, before the track closed, high school dropout named William Hartsfield, might recognize that name, used to go out and watch these flying exhibitions. And that's where he actually caught the aviation bug. That's where
he decided that Atlanta needed to
later on
be a part of this
once he got into politics.
Right.
So Asa Candler Sr., Buddy's father, acquired title to the racetrack. Apparently went through a foreclosure.
It did, yeah.
And so he bought it outright. And so his son, Buddy, convinced his dad to lease the racetrack to a couple of local pilots who wanted to offer flying lessons and test the idea of airmail in the region. They erected some hangars on the land, but it was a small airfield. It was not really. Well, anyway, City of Atlanta came knocking. They wanted to lease the former speedway and turn it into an official airfield. And I think maybe even to get a sweeter deal, they called it Candler Field.
Sure.
And as we know, this later became Hartsfield-Jackson. And you'd think, well, the rest is history.
Yeah, that's the rest of the story. No.
But it's not, actually. A power struggle, believe it or not, between the Methodist Church and Vanderbilt University in Nashville almost led to Emory University being located on the 290 acres where Hartsfield-Jackson, the busiest airport in the world, now stands. It's a pretty crazy story.
It is. It really is.
Vanderbilt, founded 1870s, money from Cornelius Vanderbilt.
Sure.
Had close ties to the Methodist Episcopal Church South.
Right.
Around 1905, a dispute arises between Vandy Board of Trustees. They wanted to operate more like an independent modern university. The church wanted to stay a church-controlled institution. 1910, it's a full-on power struggle. Yeah. The church sues. Tennessee Supreme Court actually rules in favor of Vandy, goes all the way to Supreme Court of Tennessee. So Bishop Warren Candler.
There's that last name again.
That's right. Asa Candler Sr.'s brother was at the center of the conflict. He wanted Vandy, of course, to stay a church school. It was a huge defeat for him when the court decided against him. So Bishop Candler and the Methodists decided, hey, we'll just create our own university. The church can control them. We're not going to fight with Vandy anymore. We're going to create one west of the Mississippi, ends up being SMU.
Right.
And we're going to create one east of the Mississippi,
which ends up being
Emory
University.
Exactly. Bishop Candler says rather than create entirely new university, he had been the president
of Oxford.
Emory at Oxford.
Right.
That's exactly right. And he says, let's use this as the nucleus for the new school. And who better to finance this scheme?
One of the wealthiest men in the state of Georgia.
That's right. Or the South.
Yeah.
His brother, Asa Candler Sr., again, founder of the Coca-Cola Company.
Right.
And so he does. He approaches his brother. Brother is, a religious man. He's up for the idea, wants to support his brother. And they get to work. And Asa says, you know what? These pilots out at my former racetrack, even the city of Atlanta, it's not bringing in that much money. So maybe the lease is almost up. Why don't we put Emory out there?
Perfect.
290 acres. And it's close to the city.
Right.
Perfect location. And in fact, the residents of Hapeville even say, we love this idea. And their Chamber of Commerce gets together and they raise $50,000.
God,
that's a lot of money back then. Yeah. And so looks like Emory is going to be located where Hartsfield-Jackson is. I mean, what would that have meant?
I know. It almost breaks your brain.
It does. Right. And so they're moving forward with this plan. The church's governing board was not convinced, and the deal fell through. Maybe it was too far from city center. I don't know. Anyway, so Asa Sr. also had 75 acres in Druid Hills, which he developed.
Yeah, right.
And he said, okay, how about this? It's known as the famous $1 million letter or something like that. He donates 75 acres where Emory now stands,
right,
and $1 million to fund the school. But man,
how different
almost
would Atlanta be if it did not have Candler? The story of Atlanta is built on Candler Field and that evolution of the airport.
Right.
That's not there. They don't have that 200 acres. Atlanta just doesn't.
Right. It's the butterfly that didn't flap its wings.
Exactly. All right, we get back to the patent real quickly, which actually ties into the first fatality in an airplane.
Yeah.
And it's this. Wilbur and Orville were concerned about people stealing their technology. In fact, there's a famous story about Thomas Edison going into one of the hangars and pulling out a tape measure and like measuring the wing, and Wilbur finding out.
No
and
kidding.
Getting really angry.
Yeah.
But Orville Wright is trying to sell this technology, these planes, to the United States government. We've talked about that. In August of 1908, he's conducting these demonstrations for the U.S. Army at Fort Myer in Virginia, which is just outside of Washington, D.C. And part of these demonstrations, the flyers at this point now have 2 seats. So you can take someone up in the plane with you. They're upright. They're no longer lying prone.
Right.
Allows Army officers and various people to experience the flight, and it allows Wilbur especially to train future pilots in the technology, which is important for the Army.
Absolutely.
They need people to be able to fly these things.
Exactly.
Well, he takes up a Lieutenant Thomas E. Selfridge in one of his flights. Now, Thomas E. Selfridge, everybody pretty much Orville was good with. Thomas Selfridge, he was not, because Thomas Selfridge worked with the Aerial Experiment Association, which was a group founded by Alexander Graham Bell. It was a competitor, and it was someone who they thought was looking at their technology.
I had no idea Alexander Graham Bell had any interest, any involvement in aviation.
If you were an inventor at that time, you were trying to figure out flight.
Yeah.
So he was not comfortable taking Selfridge up.
Okay.
And that does not lead to anything. And it's strange that there was a fatality, frankly, because the Wright brothers were so careful and so cautious in how they flew. But he goes up on this flight. They get up in the air. After several circuits on the parade ground, a crack developed in one of the propellers. And the portion of the damaged propeller struck a supporting wire, causing additional damage and making the aircraft difficult to control. So Orville shuts off the engine, and he thinks he's going to glide down to the ground. But the flyer entered a steep descent and crashed. Both men seriously injured. Selfridge suffered a fractured skull and died that evening without gaining consciousness. And at 26 years old, he was the first person to die as a result of an airplane accident.
Yeah.
Now, Orville also sustained serious injuries, including broken leg, broken ribs, other fractures. Took weeks. It took him a long time to recover. But they determined after the accident that it was structural failure from the propeller.
Yeah. You know how Wilbur ultimately died?
No, I do not.
It wasn't a plane crash.
No.
You know what it was?
I did. What was it?
Bad oysters.
Get out.
Yeah, you fly you test fly all these aircraft.
He crashed all the time, too.
I know. 1912. Bad oysters. Trip to Boston. So I did want to mention these last 2 parting thoughts. Later in life, Orville, this was after World War II, interestingly expressed sadness about the death and destruction brought about by bombers in World War II.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, and I thought that was...
that's interesting.
That's kind of a salient point for me.
Well, because they were really interested in selling the planes to the United States because they thought it could be helpful, especially in
for the military.
They thought you could fly out and see the battlefield and come back and report, not carrying bombs
and we're
weapons.
Recording on, June 9th, I think it is. And on June 7th, apparently, 99 years ago, the first machine gun was attached to a Wright Flyer B. So, I mean, pretty soon after they got the design,
they put a machine gun. They made it a weapon.
Right, exactly.
That's crazy.
And I do want to end with something that did end up on the cutting room floor. Maybe we'll come back to it. But a Georgia man by the name of Micaiah Clark Dyer filed a patent number 154654 for a, quote, apparatus for navigating the air, close quote. This was in June 1874. Approved September 1874.
1874.
That's right.
That's
flew
wild.
Flew several test flights in North Georgia that were witnessed, reported on by the Gainesville Eagle newspaper and the Macon Telegraph and Messenger.
Wow.
Yeah. We'll leave it with that.
That's one for a future episode.
Indeed.
And that's our show. We hope you enjoyed it. Leave us a comment about what we missed, which was a lot, I am sure, including the fact that the first flight may have been in 1874.
Couple of years
for leaving us with that last little nugget.
Indeed.
And what did you find the most interesting?
This is History for Cocktail Parties with hack historians Thornton Kennedy and James Ottley.